Okay, as I mentioned today, we are talking about neighborhood canvassing. So I am going to share my screen and we'll get started. I have a few slides that I'm going to go over with you guys, and then absolutely open to questions. Feel free to interrupt or speak up or put a question in the chat at any time. We'll try to keep this as casual as we can, especially since we have just the four of us. Let's see here. Always my PowerPoint decides not to work right when I need it to work. But what we're going to cover today is exactly what neighborhood canvassing is, why it's useful, and then we're going to go through some execution tips. So what is neighborhood canvassing? I found a neat article by the ACLU that said a lot more than this, but basically boiled it down to a systemic effort to speak directly to individuals, often by going from home to home. So that's really what we're talking about here is a grassroots effort of people, co-op representatives going door to door. Why is this useful? In my opinion, co-ops are really built one conversation at a time. When we have the opportunity to sit down and look someone in the eye and have a conversation with them about what a co-op is and what it does, 9 times out of 10, that person's on board. Now, whether or not they end up buying shares and becoming a member of the co-op, that's another story, but we get a much better chance to tell our story face to face. So it's a really good opportunity to do that. It's also a really good opportunity to make yourself, to make the co-op introduction. So even if it's not a conversation, even if you're leaving a leaflet or pamphlet behind, often it'll be the first unique touch that an individual gets. And when I say touch, I'm talking about the marketing spectrum. And we know that it takes 7 to 9 touches from start to finish for someone to make a purchase or take an action. So we have to touch them, be that via an email or a booth at a fair or a flyer on their door 7 times before they're going to take action, 7 to 9 times before they're going to take action. So it's another way for us to do that. And it also provides us an avenue for feedback. So if we get a chance to have a conversation with a homeowner or an individual or a tenant, a resident of a home, we can ask them if they know about the co-op, what they've heard about the co-op, what are they looking forward to, what do they want in the co-op? Why haven't they become an owner? And that feedback can be really valuable to help the co-op grow and to help tailor the co-op to the neighborhood, that we're canvassing. And that human interaction, that eye-to-eye connection, really, I think, is invaluable and can really serve the co-op well. So some execution tips, how to do this right. Really, the bulk of the work, as with most things, comes with the preparation. And why this does not look like it's right. No. Oh, here we go. There we go. Sorry, I don't know why it took a while for that to populate, but we want to prepare. We want to identify target neighborhoods. And there are lots of ways to do that. When you have when you want your store in a downtown area, let's say, or the geographic vicinity of where the store will be, that's a good starting point. If you have a location for your store, but it's not yet open, the surrounding neighborhoods of the store is a good place. But you want to identify where you want to do your canvassing. You want to develop a script. And it's best to be short and simple. And we could do a whole session on what that script should include and what it entails. But you want to give your volunteers some valuable information that they can use to have conversations with potential owners that they come in contact with. You also, in addition to that script, you want to make sure your volunteers are familiar with the FAQ for your co-op. So there are frequently asked questions that every co-op gets, like when will you open and where will you be, all of those things. And you want to make sure that your volunteers have good answers for those. And then you want to set a goal. How many households do you want to reach? How many blocks do you want to cover? How many conversations do you want to have? And share that goal with your volunteers. And then you have to recruit and train those volunteers. So getting the right people on board, making sure that they understand the script and they know that when to show up and what to wear and what the answers to the FAQ are, making sure that they're really prepared is really, really important. And then you have to create the print material that you're going to leave behind. And that's really an important piece of the puzzle. And you want to make that material, of course, you want to make it digestible and attractive to the reader, but you also want to design it so that it's measurable. So what do I mean by that? So maybe a QR code that you can track, you put a QR code on the back where they can get more information. Maybe it's a return postcard, like to send in a postcard for more, or to become an owner for more information. Maybe it's a link. They want to click on a link so that you can measure the activity that comes as a result of your canvassing. And I've got an example of co-op's door-to-door hanger that I'm going to share with you at the end of the session, and I'll send a link to in the email afterwards so you can see what it looks like in person. So you want to get that print material created and printed. And so there's some cost associated with that, especially if you're doing color, but certainly I believe this is well invested time and energy and money. And then you want to consider your demographics. If the neighborhood that you're canvassing is a Spanish-speaking neighborhood, or there's a high concentration of another language in that neighborhood, consider having volunteers that speak that language and or having your materials in that language. I think that's a really easy way we can bridge the gap between neighborhoods where we might not have as much contact if we don't have that in language ability to communicate with them. And then you want to track your progress. And there's lots of ways to track your progress, but lots of them cost money. So there are apps. Political organizations do a really good job of neighborhood canvassing. Other organizations that do this, include nonprofit organizations, political candidates, neighborhood issues, what do you call it? Neighborhood watch kind of organizations. They go door to door. Salespeople have a tendency to go door to door. And I've noticed that more recently. We're getting more salespeople knocking at our door. But regardless, there are apps tailored towards tracking that work. So the app can tell me as a volunteer to go down one street and would tell Darlene she's going to go on another street, and then Susan, you'd have your own set of parameters, and Kim, you too. So none of us would be crossing paths or stepping on each other's toes, and the app keeps track of what we're doing. Well, those things cost money, and co-ops, we typically don't have lots of money to spare. But My Maps, which is a Google tool, is a really great option. We use that. I've used that myself personally when canvassing, and it allows you to create a map and then for users to draw lines on the map to indicate where they have canvassed. So I would create a map of my neighborhood and I would send it to all of you, and I'd say, hey, Darlene, you take 18th Street, and Susan, you take 17th. And then when we got done, Darlene and Susan would go in and draw a line on the map and document their name saying I did that route. So we have a record of what's been done and when it's been done. It's a free, easy way to do that. And I've seen lots of organizations use it successfully. It does take some technical know-how. So the volunteer using it needs to have the ability to do that. And if they don't have that ability, I hate to have technology be a hindrance for anyone to participate. We can help them with that. As organizers, they could send us an email what streets they walked. We can update the map. So there's lots of ways around that if there are technical challenges. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is consider your execution strategy. And part of that is the time of day. So you don't want to send folks knocking on doors at 7 a.m. or 10:30 p.m. Not that any of us would do that, but we certainly want to make sure that we are considering what time of day is the best for this kind of activity. You want to make sure to avoid distractions. And by that, what I primarily mean is your phone. It's really easy for us. We all get caught up in what's happening on our phones, unfortunately. And when you're having a conversation with someone or walking the neighborhood, if you're spending the whole time looking down at your phone, you're not spending that time engaging. So I encourage folks who are canvassing to put their phone in their pocket. You need it. You should have it for safety reasons and for other reasons, but you shouldn't be using it. And I see that Jennifer's joined us. Glad you're here, Jennifer. Okay, so the next thing is not to use jargon. We often in our world get caught up in acronyms and jargon that makes sense to us. We know what these words mean, but the general public does not. So we want to make sure that we're talking in terms that everyone can understand. And I like to think about communication with the public at the 6th grade level. So how a 6th grader would talk about the co-op, how we would communicate about the co-op is where we want to be, using very plain, direct language, no jargon, no acronyms. And of course, we want to be professional and friendly. And by professional, I don't mean like wear a suit and tie or wear a co-op shirt or anything by that. I mean, be clean, be well presented, you know, have a smile on your face, be open, and be friendly, smiling, using good body language, not crossing your arms, kind of the same type of feedback I would suggest when you're tabling. So you keep your arms open, your hands open, you don't have things, you're not holding anything in your hand besides the material that you're going to leave with them. And you have very open and friendly body language. And then you use the 2 times rule. When you knock on someone's door, you should wait about 30 seconds for them to answer. And then you knock again or ring the doorbell again. And in this day and age with Ring cameras, 9 times out of 10 are doorbell cameras. They know somebody knows you're at the door if there's surveillance available. So they may or may not decide to answer the door. So if you've knocked twice and they don't answer, you simply leave your materials behind. So we don't want to force ourselves on anyone. We don't want to, hound or pester anyone. We just want to make the option available. And if they come to the door, we can have a conversation. Okay, if they don't answer the door, you're going to leave your print materials behind. But it's really important that you don't leave those materials in the mailbox. Evidently, it's illegal to put mail in the mailbox. That's not mail. And I learned this as a little girl doing political canvassing in my neighborhood when I put a flyer in a individual's mailbox and got an earful. So it's a lesson I know all too well. But you leave it. A lot of the materials that I've seen co-ops use are door hangers. So you simply hook it on the door. And I have an example of one of those that we'll show at the end of the session as well. You have to honor that no solicitation signage. So if they do have a sign up that says that they do not want signage or they do not want solicitations, we should not be knocking on their door. It's really important. So that's a great way to just get off on the wrong foot, unfortunately. So if that signage is up there, we simply have to skip that house. And pairing up is a good tip as well. I like that idea of pairing up for a couple reasons. Number one, it's more fun for the volunteer if they are spending time with another co-op owner, and they can learn from each other. So, they can take turns taking the lead on the conversation and hearing how each of them presents the script and talks about the co-op. But it also elevates the importance of the conversation for the homeowner or the individual that we're knocking on their door, the resident. When there are 2 people there, it's like, oh, wow, okay, this is really important. This isn't just one person coming to my door. This is so important that they've sent 2 people from their organization to my home to talk about this. So it really does amplify the message when you pair up. Of course, that takes double the volunteers though, so you have to have the resources to do that. And I think it's important to take notes, to have a clipboard or some kind of maybe a note-taking app on your phone, or you can record feedback and information that you're getting from these conversations. So when you have a conversation with someone and they tell you that they're really excited that the co-op is coming because they need baby food, or they want organic produce, whatever it is that they're looking for, whatever they're excited about. If we're documenting that and using it at the co-op in some organized fashion, that's really valuable feedback. So I absolutely encourage canvassers to take notes. Following up, also really important. So if you have a great conversation with someone, it's worth a follow-up, you know, to send them a note or stop by their house again, or stick something in the mail, because clearly we have their address, so we know where they live, and have another conversation with them. Because sometimes, like I said, that the 7 to 9 touch scenario applies, and maybe us coming to their door was touch number 6, and touch number 7 is the very next thing that's going to push them to the point of making the purchase. So I do think it's really important to follow up, especially if they've asked a question that you don't know the answer to, and you've told them, hey, I need to get back to you. When that happens, we absolutely need to follow up with them and get them the answer to that question. And then you want to evaluate your success. So when I talked about the print materials that we'll leave behind when we're having these conversations, we talked about ways to make those print materials measurable. And that's QR codes and links and return postcards or return mail they could fill out and send back to us. And that gives us, you know, an opportunity to evaluate how successful we've been. And unfortunately, we do not have a lot of data on the success of neighborhood canvassing for co-ops. Now, we know canvassing is successful in the political realm. We know it's successful in the sales realm. Actually, people still do it, and it's still working. But really and truly, in this age of cell phones and Wi-Fi, that personal face-to-face conversation really is successful. It really can be successful, but evaluating that success is really going to be critical for all of us moving forward. So if you do a campaign like this, I highly encourage you to keep track of the response you get to your canvassing, and then to share that response with your fellow cooperators at a session like this, or in your peer groups, or maybe just with friends in the co-op world who do the same kinds of things that you do. Because when we can manage and evaluate the success of this kind of activity, we can help each other be more successful. And we can try to gauge, okay, what could we do differently to make it more successful, or what could other co-ops learn from us in terms of the success that we have had. Let's see here. So examples. So this is for a portion of a door hanger that Rooted Carrot Co-op used just recently within the last year, when they had announced that their store was opening. And they were, you know, saying, have you heard the news? We're going to be in your neighborhood. And you can see this is the cutout here where the door hanger goes, and this is the top of it. I'll open the link to the actual documents. Can you all still see my screen? Do you see the door hanger opening?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is the door hanger in its entirety. So this is the front with a picture of the co-op, and talks about the community aspects of it and more information, contact information. And then on the back, why do we need a co-op, and how do we become members, are the information on the back side of the flyer. So an improvement here from my perspective would be a QR code that takes you to the website or takes you to the membership application, so that we can then gauge the impact of this door hanger. How many people who saw this door hanger utilized the QR code, and then how many of those people who utilized the QR code became owners. So we really can get some good data, and we can identify success and failure, for that matter, because when we learn as much from our failure as we do our success. So let's go back to.
We don't see a back side at all.
Pardon me?
Katie. We just see the front side. Is there a back side too?
Oh, you do? Okay, let me go back. Let me see.
Yeah, I only saw the first one with the top of the door
Okay.
hanger. I didn't see anything else.
Okay, let me go here and open this here, and then I'll share my screen and see if that works. Okay, do you see the door hanger with white background now? And as I scroll down, do you see it moving? Okay, all right, so this is the front with the door hanger cut out here. Picture of the store indicating it's coming soon, coming to you. Description of the co-op, contact information on the co-op. So this is the front side. And then where this white divide here, this is the back side. So again, the cutout, why does the co-op, why do we need a co-op in our community? And then the benefits of membership in the co-op.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, you bet. And I'm going to send a link to that as well in our in the follow-up email that I send with the presentation. So you should be able to download it even if you want to.
There's no QR code, right?
Correct. That's one thing I
Okay.
would improve on this one. This is one
Yeah.
I would say that an additional measurement would be a QR code that you could use as measurement. Yeah. And just for fun, as I was digging through my resources for this presentation, I found a picture of Green Top Groceries canvassing. So this is one time when we were out snowy. It was snowy and rainy, yucky day, but lots of people showed up, and we went door to door with our brochures, very similar to the ones that Rooted Carrot can use. You can see the woman with the black hood is holding them. They're pretty food pictures with good lingo about the co-op. So I thought it was funny that I just happened upon that picture as we were as I was preparing for this. So, and I found this was part of a presentation I did. That was just the template that I saw when I was doing my last presentation, and I liked it. So I'm keeping it in my presentations, that the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So I'm going to quit talking and let you guys ask some questions, and then we can talk about how we might implement this in your co-op.
I just had a few things. I was wondering if you leave a postcard, is it better? It's probably better to leave a stamped postcard, right? So they don't have to add their own stamp and make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, yeah, and you can even do the kind, Susan, where you could use a door hanger that has a perforation, so you can just tear the postcard off that's already addressed and stamped, and they can fill out or respond on the postcard. So absolutely, yes, I would address it, or I would stamp it and have it addressed. Yeah.
Okay. How many co-ops have the thing with the post office where maybe they get charged if somebody actually uses it, but you're not actually putting a stamp on each thing, so that if people just throw it away, you don't lose because stamps are getting expensive.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. That's a good question, Susan. I don't know how many co-ops are using that. And I know I don't know.
Like that's for bulk mailing, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but absolutely, it's worth some research to see if you could get bulk pricing for an print material like this.
Yeah, and then I noticed when I was doing some political phone canvassing that among the Black community, they were very offended if you called on Sunday. Oh, like this is a sacred day and you should not be calling. So anyway, that was one thing. And,
yeah, that's very valuable.
Yeah, and I was wondering if people are a little bit more likely to open their door if it's a woman there, or maybe paired with a woman and a man rather than like just a man or two men.
Well, that's a good point, and I don't know what statistics are on that. I know I would not open the door for a man if I were home alone, for sure. But I do like the idea of pairing people up, especially a man and a woman. but that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, and I suppose a lot of times if it's a man, you're thinking, oh, he wants to sell me a new roof or something,
Mhm.
or we're in your neighborhood. And then, yeah, only other thing I was thinking of was uh, we have had more success. It seems like we don't have a lot of success with tabling as far as getting new members, but we've had more success when we had an event like a free dinner where people who were owners in the co-op would invite like a table, like maybe people they knew from the Y or friends or whatever, they would invite a table of
Mhm.
people and they would
Mhm.
get like a simple free dinner, maybe some music, and then they'd be sitting there and you could give them your whole spiel about how wonderful your co-op's going to be. And but I thought possibly if you had something like this that was in the planning stage, when you canvassed, you could invite people like, we're having a free
Absolutely.
dinner and we'd be happy to see you. And anyway,
Yeah, absolutely. And you could canvas for that purpose. You could canvas, you could use your canvassing to fill your tables.
yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
Mhm.
true.
You
Yeah,
absolutely could.
yeah, that's it for me.
Great, thank you. Good
You're
feedback.
welcome.
One thing I'll mention that you made me think of, Susan, is that I think I'm kind of old school in my communication strategy. I very much value snail mail. I know not everyone does, and we get so much junk mail, but I put canvassing kind of in the same category as snail mail. Because when you get a card in the mail from your friend that you haven't heard from a long time, brightens your day, makes you smile. It's a nice thing to happen. And when someone comes to your door and they're not selling you a roof, like you mentioned, Susan, and they don't want you to vote for them, they're just telling you about a really cool thing happening in the neighborhood, that makes me smile too. And I think that translates, I think, to a lot of people. But I thought of that while you were talking, Susan. So what other feedback and questions do we have?
Well, at first I was thinking maybe the Purple Carrot, we're at stage 2B. So right now we're in the process of getting our numbers updated on our performa, the construction documents, that kind of stuff. But when you were talking about like maybe right before opening, I thought, oh yeah, we're not too late. We could do it right before we open.
Absolutely.
So one question I did have, so we're a small town of a little over 8,000 people. And so we plan on drawing in people from other smaller than us communities of towns, maybe, within 10 miles away. So what would distance of the canvassing we would be focused on? Would we be looking at just our town? Would we be looking at just like walking distance from the store? Or would we also canvass in those nearby towns 10 miles away?
Well, that's a great question, Darlene. And I think that really is up to the co-op. And if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't limit yourself. I like the idea of canvassing around the store, right before you open. But absolutely, in your position, when you have these smaller communities surrounding you that can benefit from the co-op, I would target those as well, because that can absolutely be valuable traffic for the co-op, and those folks may or may not be aware of what you're up to, and I think it would be worth your investment to let them know.
Would you suggest canvassing like businesses as well?
Absolutely. I think it's a different tactic, I would say, when you're canvassing businesses. So I think door-to-door canvassing is one thing and business canvassing is another, and so we could talk about that in a little more detail in another session, but I think it's valuable, absolutely, to introduce the co-op to other businesses in the community.
And then here's a little tip. So if you do leave a door hanger or a flyer or whatever, if you tape like some candy,
Ooh.
people will, even if they're ready to throw it away and not read it, they're going to take the candy off. And so at least they glanced at the door knocker before
Love it.
just adding like or something so that
Great
they don't.
tip.
Yeah.
That's a great tip. Jennifer, it looked like you had something to chime in there.
That was all my,
Thank you, Darlene.
My question was actually very close to Darlene's, which was how does one, because we're actually in a slightly larger urban sprawl type of area where it's actually kind of hard to know where, we're Hillsborough Food Co-op in Oregon. Sometimes it's hard to even know if you're in Hillsborough or, Beaverton or whatever. And so yeah, just in that vein, like, because we won't be able to obviously canvass the whole area, if you had any suggestions on how to target, like, is there a certain kind of way to identify demographics that would be more receptive, that kind of
Yeah, that's a great question, Jennifer. And you can start with your pro forma, with your market study. So I know Hillsborough has a market study. I'm guessing most of you have at least some form of market study. In every market study will be a section about the demographics, and pretty consistently across the board, co-op demographics are college educated, work at home, work in the healthcare field, entertainment field. There's another one, but they're pretty standard demographics across the board. And if you can use census data, and you can even go to the library and talk with a librarian. They're really helpful, and I've had really good success in telling them, hey, I'm trying to find out where there's a strong population of this demographic, and they have access to census data and other data that can be helpful. That's one really good way. And I found, as I was doing this, as I was preparing for our presentation, I was Googling some things like what resources are available to you, and there are some free resources. Of course, there are paid resources, so you can pay for a list of demographics that match what your co-op is looking for, but that we don't have the kind of money to do that. So in a nutshell, Jennifer, I would say to start with the library and talk with a librarian, let them know read your market study, see what the demographics indicate for your market study. And sometimes your market study even pinpoints geographic areas. So I've seen market studies with maps in them, like this is a strong concentration of your population, your clientele. That would be a great start. Then I'd go to the library to pinpoint it. And then, the third option would be to utilize your common sense, so to speak. So, where the people, people like you, people who like the co-op, people who are interested in organic food, people who want to help the community, where do those people live? Is there concentration? Is there one neighborhood in your community where more of those kind of people live? And applying that, just like basic general observations about your co-op. You can also map your owners. So Google has mapping capabilities. You can look at your spreadsheet, your owner spreadsheet, and map where your owners are, and it'll pinpoint, where everyone is. You might do that, and then target areas where there aren't co-op owners. So that also would be a free and easy way to identify some target areas.
What Google tool is that?
Well, you would just simply use your ownership list, Susan. So every co-op has, your first name, last name, address, email address. You have that list, and
Right.
There's mapping software, mapping services within Google. And I don't know, I don't have it in front of me. I could figure it out for you, where you can upload that spreadsheet into a mapping tool, and it will pinpoint specifically where each address is for you visually.
And your partner had said something about that you can do a similar thing with LinkedIn, where you
Yes.
can, which seems really helpful. Like if you wanted to get together a group of your owners who were, I don't know, business owners or musicians or in marketing, whatever.
Right, yes.
But I don't know I don't know how to do that, but maybe somebody in my group does.
Yeah, but absolutely there are tools that can help you map that. And so if you need help with that, Susan, or if that's not a skill someone at your co-op has, I'm sure we could get you some resources.
Thanks. Oh, and something I was thinking about when Darlene was mentioning a piece of candy, I think that's a neat psychological thing, because I think like with having a dinner and giving people a free dinner, people feel a little bit of sort of obligation or connection, maybe when they've gotten something, you know how I
Yeah,
remember they used to send you things in the mail, like with a quarter on it. Like, oh, maybe this will make a child, smile or something. But, psychologically, it was like, well, they gave me
they
something.
gave me
maybe
a
I should.
quarter. I should do
Yeah, they gave me
something.
a quarter. Right? I
Mhm.
should do something for them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Like the quarter's not much, especially anymore. But I do think if you give people something, sometimes it creates a bit of a connection
Agreed.
in one way or another.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kim, how about you?
I was gonna add, when we looked at a building as a possible site, the printout that the realtor gave us had all kinds of data on it. So you might talk to realtors
Yeah,
to find out what's what. And we're here in Riverside, we're really close to the headquarters of Esri with the GIS people. And so
Oh,
there are quite a few people that we know, that whether they're in our co-op or from other organizations that we all belong to, we know a
Mhm.
lot of people that have access to that. So that's another thing to look at. Anyone that might have GIS. What is that? I forget what it stands for. Geographical Information System. I
Information
think.
system, yeah, yeah.
And so, because
But
they
that's-
can map anything. You pick 2 or 3, variables, and they can make a map of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good tip, and a really good tip on the realtor situation, because they have so much data at their fingertips. You are right.
And there are a number of websites, and I can't think of them offhand. I haven't had to use them in years, but you can look up, maybe it's like mycity.com or something like that. You can look up towns and it will tell you, the school district areas, and
Yep.
here's school scores and this, that, and the other, which might be important information as well.
Yeah, there really is so much data available to us. It's just a matter of picking our criteria and then executing, using those criteria to generate our map or our target. Yeah. All right. Well, what other questions or thoughts do you guys have?
Do you find this to be I had a little cat incident I had to go take care of. So I missed some of the conversation, but do you find that this is a really critical part of
Hmm.
co-op?
I would say co-ops have not used it as purposefully as they could. I think it's an untapped resource.
Okay.
So I have known of some co-ops who have used canvassing, but this isn't regular practice necessarily. I think it could be regular practice, and especially if you developed a system, so where you might canvass a neighborhood 2 or 3 times, where the first time you're simply leaving materials, you're not having conversations, but the second time you're knocking on doors. And the third time you're inviting them, for example, to Susan's dinner she was talking about. So if you were strategic about it, I think there's absolutely benefits to making it a regular part of your organizing in your development. I would say it's an untapped resource and not utilized as much as it could be. Lots of reasons for that. It takes a lot of manpower to do this, a lot of people power. And so you have to have someone organize it. You have to have somebody print the materials, and then you have to recruit all the people to do it, execute it, follow up. It's time consuming. It is. And like I said, we don't have a lot of stats to prove its effectiveness yet. So if you do it, I encourage you to keep some stats, keep some records of what's effective and what isn't, and share them with your peers so that we can answer that question a little better, Kim, and know a little more if it's worth our time and investment to do it. But
Okay.
we do know that it works in terms of face-to-face conversations work. It works in political canvassing. I believe it works for us too. Yes, Susan.
What about masking with the COVID and
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people in my community don't mask anymore, but then a lot of people do. And you know, when you're knocking on the door, is it better to have a mask or not have a mask? I guess it
Yeah.
depends partly on the volunteers' comfort level.
Yep, I think so. I would first, I would allow the volunteer to make the decision, you know, if they wear a mask or don't wear a mask. Second, I think your community's stance, your community's place in terms of masking is valuable. Here in Texas, nobody's wearing a mask anywhere, nowhere. And so it would be unusual for someone to come to my door with a mask on. Unless they're sick, you know, and then when someone does have a mask on, you think to yourself, oh, you're sick. You don't want to be spreading what you have. But that being said, I think it might be just standard practice. If I were just going to make a determination right now for all of us, what we're going to do about masking, I'd say take a mask with you and have it around your neck. And when you get to the door, you know, have a conversation, you know, ask the person, would you prefer I put my mask on, or are you comfortable without my mask on? And let the homeowner dictate. But we're outdoors, you know, we're not going into homes. We didn't talk about that. I would not recommend going into a home. This is a front porch kind of doorway conversation, not something we go inside for. Absolutely wouldn't recommend that. But when we're outdoors, it seems to me people are a little less mask paranoid. Other questions? Okay, well, I have two other things that I wanted to mention today before we wrap up, and you still have time to chime in with questions. You know, don't feel like I'm rushing you off here. The first one being the FCI Live sessions that are going on right now. I'm doing one on Tuesday, February 1st at noon, and it's on capital campaign readiness. Is your co-op ready for a capital campaign? So hopefully you all can join for that. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is the content package that I have available right now for co-ops. Hopefully you've seen emails from me or Facebook or social media posts about it. It's basically 90 days of content pre-written for you. So social media posts, graphics to go with those posts, 3 videos that John Steinman did that are really great videos, and they're done in a way that makes the video applicable to any co-op. He did a really good job of generalizing enough that that it's applicable, but it's not too general that it doesn't make sense for your co-op. So they're really great videos, and they're different lengths. So we've got a 30-second video, a 1-minute video, and then I think it's 2.5 or 3-minute video. So useful in different settings, social media, emails to your co-op owners, and different, and on your website even. So and then it also includes sample letters to the editor and newsletter articles as well. So it's really fantastic content, and to create this content costs about $5,000. So it's very valuable. And none of us could afford this otherwise. You know, my co-op couldn't afford it when I was doing this kind of work to pay for this kind of professional material. And so the way we've structured this is that co-ops pitch in a small amount individually to cover the cost collectively. So it's $250, $250 pledge. And that allows, if we get 20 co-ops to do that, that covers the costs of the creation of the materials. So the videos, you know, it's not cheap to make videos, and the graphic work, it's professional graphic work by a cooperative graphic designer. So something to think about, and I can put the link to the pledge form and more information in the chat. But that's really it in terms of my stuff. So what other questions do you guys have?
So the 90 days, that can be whenever you wanted to use it, or you could stretch it out over more than 90 days. Is that how it
That's
works?
a great question. Yep, that's a great question. So I'm putting a link to the pledge form in the chat, and let me get a quick link to more information on my website too, real quick. All right, let's put this in. Okay, so you're right, Susan, good question. So the content is designed to start being used February 1st. So the goal is to have these pledges in place by January 31st, so I can send out the content to you guys and you could start utilizing it in February. But that being said, it's a guide. So you can stretch it out as long as you want. In fact, younger co-ops, and I would recommend do that, stretch it out longer. Co-ops like you, Darlene, and 2B, where you're about to start raising money, this is going to be really helpful for you and very timely. So you could use it start to finish 90 days, right now. But a younger co-op could spread it out, I would say probably over 6 months or even a year. But one of the reasons I did this topic was because co-ops that educate their audience about how we raise money are so much more successful. When we don't talk about where our money comes from and the fact that we take loans and investments from our owners, and when we don't talk about where the funds are spent and educate our audience, they don't quite understand what we're doing when it comes time to raise money and we aren't as successful. So it does that for you. And it's all customizable in Canva. So the graphics come as templates. So you can put your logo on it. You can change it to your colors. You can change it to your font. You can make it very brand specific for your co-op.
And the videos, then you would just have links that you could use at any time.
Yep, you'll get the links to the videos. Yep, and so you can embed those links in an email. You can put them in your social media. You can do whatever you wanted with them.
Yeah, the leader of the peer group that I'm in now was mentioning something about like that people have said to her in the past, like, oh, okay, I pay $100 or $200 or whatever to become an owner. How's that gonna? How are you gonna build a store with that kind of money?
Exactly. And what this does, Susan, is answer that question. So it kind of articulates to your audience, hey, it's more than you pitching in $150 to build a store. A store costs millions of dollars, and this is how we fund it. This is why we fund the way we do. We know we're weird. We know we're different from everybody else, but we're okay with it. And this is the method to our madness, and we hope that you'll join us. So it is exactly the answer to that question. And the thing I like about this kind of package is that it's us all practicing Principle 6. So co-ops helping co-ops. We all pitch in a little bit and we all get access to this really valuable content. So shameless self-plug, but absolutely it's something I wish I had when I was in your shoes. And so I want you guys to have access to it.
So if you didn't get all the pledges by the time you want them, could you extend the period? So
we could, yeah.
It's coming up soon.
Yeah, we could, Susan. So we'll have to see what happens. But if I take some advice out of my own playbook, I know that when you're raising funds or asking for any action of any kind, people wait to the deadline. It just happens that way. So I don't have any doubt that we'll hit the goal. We have 5 pledges so far, and so we need 15 more. And I have lots of interest, lots of questions from co-ops. So I know that we'll get those pledges. But if the worst case happens and we don't get them by the 31st, I'll edit the content, so it's doable by mid-February, or you can put it in place by mid-February instead of early February, and we'll extend it. But I don't intend to do that. I believe that we'll hit our goal. And I will mention, so the co-creators are John Steinman, who is author of The Grocery Story. If you haven't read that book, you should. Very well spoken, very articulate, very strong co-op leveler. And then Rachel DB Creative. She did a lot of work with Gem City Food Co-op. I think she was their outreach manager, and now she does graphic and consulting work for co-ops and other socially, social enterprises. So she's got really great credentials. Yes, Susan.
John Steinman has that app where you can find co-ops, like when you're
Yeah.
traveling. Well,
Mhm.
I put that in our last newsletter, and I was thinking that's something you could possibly even include, like in something you hand out to people or a door hanger, like you're giving them something, That's
Totally.
really, really valuable thing for people who are interested in healthy food when they're traveling.
Yes.
And he said we could use it, so we could publish it and probably, like co-ops helping co-ops.
I love that. Absolutely, Susan. And I think giving owners something tangible is always a great idea. And I love that app. Any other thoughts or questions? All right. Well, I will look forward to seeing you all hopefully on February 1st at the Campaign Readiness FCI Live. And if not, at the next Coffee with Katie, which I don't have a topic for. Any ideas on topics for that one?
Well, somebody mentioned something about like business sponsors or canvassing businesses. I don't know.
businesses? Mhm.
I don't know if that would be enough for a whole session or not, though. Yeah, I guess I was thinking, like, especially if there's some business that has anything to do with food or public health, and you
Mhm.
could even say, well, we can feature your products in our store when we open it, and we'll be an outlet for you, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's enough we could talk about there. Definitely. Other suggestions, other things you're dying to talk about?
We're getting ready to have our first big in-person meeting Saturday to talk capital campaign. So cross
Okay.
your fingers, kids.
That's exciting.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Okay, my fingers will be crossed for you. We're in a whole new realm now, it seems, with in person and kind of back in reality.
Yeah. Because we were trying, on Zooms, but everyone's got 14 other things and going on in the background. And
Mhm.
it's like, okay, we need to just be in person in a single room
Yes.
with enough room for everybody and just hash some things out.
Get in a room and talk. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Focus.
We'll
Well,
have
good luck.
our FCI booklets in hand and off we go. Ugh. All right.
All right. Well, you guys take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you as always.
All right. We'll see ya.
Bye.